So I have some like reclaimed clay here, so it hasn't been wedged in a while. Oops. And so hopefully if you're working with some clay, that you're going to have some clay that's already wedged, but you still want to wedge it anyways, just like so. That's just one piece because we're doing this outside that I should have wedged my clay before I came, so I'm just going to have to work it really good to make sure.
What does wedging mean?
Yeah, wedging is it's kind of like kneading dough for bread. There's all kinds of different techniques for doing it, but it helps to just sort of get all the air bubbles out of it. It helps to soften the clay too, so that it's a little bit more workable. And if you don't have it kind of well wedged, then you run the risk of cracks and air bubbles. And so I'm actually going to try to wedge it a bit on my, and it's kind of, hopefully you get the idea. Okay, so it's kind of wedged. So now I'm just kind of getting it into, just giving it the feel in my hands and just sort of keeping it, I want it to be somewhat round. It's almost like you just kind of get a feel for like when you want to start going at it. So then I hold it, I'm right-handed, so I'm going to hold it in my left, and then I'm going to take my right thumb and I'm going to stick it in, but I don't want to go all the way through. So I'm kind of just like guessing how close to the bottom it is on the inside. So I've got this hole on the inside. Okay. And not all the way through. I'm hoping that it's somewhere around like 1/4 of an inch, maybe yeah. And then now I'm literally just pinching. So I'm using my thumb on the inside and my fingers on the outside, and I'm just kind of going like this as I'm going around the pot, and I'm going to kind of spin it as well while I'm kind of working on it. So I'm pinching from the inside and the outside, turning it, pinching a little bit and turning it, and I'm just dealing with the bottom here. I'm kind of smoothing it with my left thumb, just kind of getting a sense and trying to really pay attention to like how thick does it feel between my thumb and my fingers. I think that if you really wanted to, you could take something like a pin tool. I'm going to kind of put my thumb on the inside, the pin tool, and I'm going to pinch through to my thumb, and I'll see this is how thick it is. Like, that's pretty thick actually. So that gives me an idea that like, okay, what I think is like this is actually like this. So I'm just going to keep on working it, pinching it, trying not to poke through, and then working. I'm turning it kind of counterclockwise, but you can turn it whatever way feels right. I usually turn it like towards myself. I'm still just working at the bottom. So kind of alternating between pinching and smoothing and rolling. And then, yeah, slowly making my way to the outside walls. So it's basically this process all the way up the pot. For pinch pots, you don't need your clay terribly wet. You just need it to, if it starts to crack while you're doing this, then it's too dry actually, because see, we're outside a little bit, and so you can see there's like a little bit of cracking kind of happening here. So I'm just gonna dip my fingers in a little bit of water and just smooth it with my fingers. I'm gonna close up that hole from the pin tool too. Just smooth it, give it a little bit more moisture, but you don't need the clay terribly wet. It's not like if you're on the wheel where you need it quite wet. This you can do pretty dry. Because I do like to think about how all the elements are present in pottery. You know, like we're working with earth. You know, clay used to be rock at one point, and then through the process of having like water added to it, then it becomes malleable, and so it's because of the water that we can play with it, because it softens it. Air is always present because we're dealing with the forms, right? The creativity, which is a part of the element of air. Also, we're always being cognizant of air bubbles. You know, and that they're taking up, these little pieces are taking up space in the world. And so that's also a quality of the element of air. And then, of course, there's fire, right? Because everything is going to go through the kilns, which is an intense firing process. And it's through the firing that they become strong again, that the water is taken out of the earth, which is the clay, and then you know, it goes back to becoming rock. Yeah, so I'm starting to kind of work my way up. The walls are not bad. They're probably still a little bit thick, but it's not bad. You can always do the pin tool test and see how thick they are, because if things are too thick, then you'd have to take a lot more time in the drying process before you put it in the kiln. So if it's really thick, just like take your time drying it before you put it in the kiln. Don't put it in the kiln like part wet or like kind of dry. Like make sure it's like absolute bone dry, because when it's thick like that, then you know there's more chance that there's, you know, just going to create air bubbles, and the water in it is just like, it's just going to create more problems. So when it's thicker, just give it lots and lots and lots of time to dry. It's cracking all over the place. I really think that's because of my wedging. Yours probably won't be doing that. I hope it's not doing that. If it is, just like get another piece of clay and wedge it or something, because I'm not even sure that this one is going to survive. But I'm getting closer to the top and the rim, and I'm just going to kind of pinch around the rim. Oops, see, there's a big crack. That's sad. That's okay. So closing it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep on kind of pinching the top, and I am going to kind of draw that clay up, and then I'm going to start to move it towards the center. So it's kind of like taking it and just really gently, I'm kind of grabbing it like this and kind of like coaxing it to come together, and I'm going to turn it as well. I don't know if that's actually like why, but it's just how I do it. I'm just constantly turning, and you can see that it's starting to make its way towards the center. So it's starting to kind of come together. And it looks kind of funny. You can always tell if you're able to open, like if it's like a little container or something like that you're made with a lid or something, that you can tell when it's been a pinch pot, because it has the cute little kind of little bum at the top. I don't know if that's okay for me to say, but it looks kind of like I think it's cute.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. So I put a little bit of water. It'll just kind of help to slide it a little bit, but I don't like working with a lot of water on pinch pots too, so just use your water sparingly, but then you can always, like, you know, you could just wipe it off. What I did, I don't know if you saw, but I just kind of took my dry sponge and just took the extra moisture off my hands. When it's getting closer like this, I'm actually like pulling some of the clay from the surface of the pot and kind of pushing it through. It'll help to kind of have something to seal it with at the top. I think it almost is close. So sometimes I'll even like blow a little bit of extra air into it just to make sure that it's like good and full, because it's a part of how it keeps its kind of shape too. So yeah, you can kind of feel it, and then I'm just gonna push the clay over and seal it right up. So now it's completely sealed. So it's kind of fun when it's like this. It's like this little ball. So then you can start to like figure out what kind of shape you want it, you know. So I like doing skulls, so I'm going to just show you how I do skulls. It's not how you have to do skulls, it's just how I do it. So I'm kind of getting a sense of like where I want the front of the face to be, And I think that just the way that it fits in my hand, the way that it kind of works, I think that this is where I want it to be. And so it's like, do I want it to be sitting up like this, or do I want, like these ones are kind of leaned back a little bit? And I do that so that you can kind of see the face of the skull more, because if you're kind of doing it like this, then it's just, you don't get to see the teeth and stuff, but it's all just like whatever you want to do. So, so if this is where I want my skull face to be, I'm gonna start with probably sticking my thumbs in to make the eyes. So somewhere around here, because you want a nice forehead, but you also want room for teeth. So, but you know, the head part is pretty fun to decorate. So I'm gonna just decide where I want the eyes, and I'm just gonna kind of use my hands to kind of like, my thumbs. Let's see. I'm just gonna make a little space for the eyes. And then while doing that, I kind of squished his face out a little bit. And I mean, it's fine to have a rounder face, but I didn't want to for this one. And then, so those are the eyes. And then I'll grab a tool to kind of, maybe even just something like this. I'll use this to just sort of start to play around with where I want the nose to be. So like probably something like this. There's like the two sinuses, and yeah, I'm noticing that like noses kind of look like upside down hearts. So, and again, because I think skulls are happy, then I like the idea of like, no, I want your nose to look like a little bit of a heart. You know, make it a little less like, my point is that you're not scary. And who could be scary if you have a heart in the middle of your face? Right? So something like that. And then I'd kind of decide where I want the mouth to be, and I want a smaller line. So I'm going to use my pin tool. And so I'm going to kind of like go in between the teeth. So I'm going to probably go somewhere around here, and I'm just going to make my line. So there's a line, and then you can, you know, use different tools. You can use just about anything to make the teeth. Maybe I'll just use my pin tool again, and I'm just going to kind of go, just make these teeth. And do the same thing. Yeah, that looks fine. And then I would be kind of, there's like the jaw line, like it kind of, there's like this space that's kind of where our cheeks are, and so there's a cavity that's in here. So I like to kind of just make this kind of chin kind of thing with these cavities, these spaces with our cheeks. And also I'm gonna kind of do the chin. And so then I have some like extra kind of clay down here, so I'm gonna actually just beat it back. Because you could do that with clay, like that's super easy. You could just sort of like, yeah, go like that. And then there's actually the, you know, like the way that our skulls are made is there's kind of like this, like it's bigger at the back than at our chin, so it kind of has this neat shape along here. Yeah, so I kind of just try to have this little spot at the back and along the base, so it's kind of like just working. And it's fun because I think just working it with your fingers, I feel like it just feels really neat, and you can kind of give them the base of the skull here. And yeah, just the process of just playing with the clay and moving it around, I think it feels really cool. So, so let's say, so that kind of gives you a bit of an idea of, I'm gonna just keep on beating him back. Yeah, and just kind of look at him. Yeah, he's kind of cute. So, if I want to add something to it, so let's say, again, you would use your clay that's been wedged. It's a little bit, so I'm going to just use little pieces just to avoid disaster, basically. So you want to make sure again that that anything that you're putting onto it, that you don't have a lot of air bubbles and stuff in it. Maybe I'll just put like a little leaf or something, because we're outside and it's fall, so it might be kind of fun to put like a little leaf on them. So I'm just going to kind of squish it and form it to kind of look like a leaf. Just a little wee bit of water to just sort of help get it to take form. So I've got this kind of leaf form. This is going to be the end that I'm going to stick to the pot. So I'm going to kind of just actually bend it outward a little bit, just a little bit. And I'm going to take an old toothbrush and I'm going to rough up the back. And then I'm going to decide where I want it to be on here. So I'm going to kind of go a little bit off center and just kind of put one right here. So I'm going to just do that. And then I use like a paintbrush to just put the water on there. We're also going to put some water on there, on the piece that goes on and the piece that's going on. And so now we want to kind of like, we don't want to just go splat on it, because then that could have air bubbles. So we're going to I'm going to start at the bottom and kind of just work its way up as it's adhering, so that hopefully there's no air bubbles in there at all. So, and then you can see like it's often happens that when you're adding things on it, it has like little cracks around the edge. So I'll use just a paintbrush to just sort of smooth that around, and also just really help to get it on there. So then maybe I'll put the vein, and then just like boop, 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 and it kind of looks like a leaf. Yeah, so I use, this is just like an old, like what is this? Yeah, exactly, for like making shish kebabs. So this works really great for carving in as well. You can make some fun little designs with that. You'll see that it kind of leaves like little pieces behind, but that will happen less if you're doing it when it's a bit drier. So yeah. And you know what? And honestly, with pottery, with sculpture, I use my hands. Like those are the tools that I use the most. Is just my hands. I just work with my fingers, my little finger, my thumbs a lot. Yeah. So that kind of gives you an idea. So if you want to do a lid, so it's just kind of, yeah, if that kind of makes sense. It's got an angle. Yeah, that's a good word.
Can you put the lid on again while I'm at the
center, because you need it to kind of sit. And I also, I usually don't make a perfect round lid, because it's only going to fit one way. And so if it's round, then it's frustrating that you're like kind of turning it and turning it and turning it. So I just, like, it's really obvious.
I like that.
It fits like this. Like this is how it fits. And two, like when you make it so it has like little different pieces, like that one has a little corner on it, I think it actually helps to stabilize the lid as well. So ideally I would be waiting until this was drier before I cut the lid, but we can just go for it. So I'll just take a knife, and again, I don't want to go straight down because I want there to be something for the lid to catch onto. So I'm gonna actually, before I do that, I'm gonna make a little, I'm gonna see how I want it to go. So maybe this shape, I'm just gonna kind of draw a shape. And once you have the top cut, it's also good to let them, I always let them dry together. So I wouldn't take the lid off and dry it away from the body separately. I would keep it attached. Okay, so because it's pretty like wet clay and it's pretty fresh, then I'm just going to be really careful about taking it out. I would really recommend letting it dry a bit before you do this. So come on, little baby. Oh, and you can see that it's very thick still at the top. So this is part of a learning lesson too, that you can see how I mean, it's thicker where it's coming together because you had all those different sides coming together. But yeah, so it would have been, but my walls could have been a little bit thinner as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So because it has that nice angle though, it's going to fit quite well. So I would put it back in and let it dry there, because now that it's been separated, it's not gonna adhere back together. And you might want to put a little something on the top so that you can grab it, because it can be pretty tricky to grab sometimes. So yeah, put a little something to grab onto. I'm going to put something even smaller. Always working the little pieces that you're going to add on to make sure that they don't have any air bubbles and stuff. And don't wear black when you're doing this, because then you'll get full of dirt. But it's okay. I'm always full of clay, and I feel like it's like my badge of honor. It's like, how would people know that I'm a potter if I wasn't covered in clay all the time? So yeah, just, yeah. And any kind of edges and stuff afterwards, like, oh yeah, and I like putting, you know, just like little details. Little bloop. It's just cute. It's just cute. Yeah, so yeah, I wouldn't, again, I wouldn't cut the top off until it's like a little bit drier.
Couple hours?
Yeah, if it's uncovered, maybe a couple hours. You could even use a hairdryer, I think, to dry a little bit faster if you need it to. Or just cover it gently, like with something, and then even the next day. But you might want to check it, because it depends on how much humidity is in your room, and like there's so many different factors that can throw a wrench in there. So there we go. These are pinch pots.